बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरन मोहन जू की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज शिल गुरुदेव की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार शिल भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट महाभगवत श्री गोरक्षरस बाबाजी महाराज की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानुगौर्य गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पतदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम चय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट विरक्त गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर की जय। सरार्था-दार्शिनी वृत्ति की जय। श्री भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। गौड़ीय भाष्य की जय। श्री उद्धव-गीत की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीश्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणेति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनेति नामिने। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। गुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रयेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवतसेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamang charanantikam bhaktya vihina aparada lakshai Shiptashtakamaditaranga madhe Kripa mai tvam sharanam prapanna Vrinde namaste charanaravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Raseshwari Mataji and Sudevi Didi. And Indira Mataji, right this minute at 7:30 a.m., which it's 7:30 a.m. in India right now, she is boarding a plane to America. That's the exact time she's leaving. But she said that she'll watch this later and catch up. All right, so let's do a recap. The last meeting. Lord Brahma and the other demigods came to Dwarka and offered their prayers to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, anticipating his imminent disappearance. Addressing Brahma, Lord Krishna disclosed that he would soon depart from this world after withdrawing the Yadu dynasty, having already made the arrangements for that through the curse of the sages. Understanding Krishna's plan, Uddhava, the unalloyed devotee and dearest friend of Krishna, was overwhelmed with separation evil, everybody. Sorry about that. The power went out. So let me reshare my screen. Oh man, and I missed a bunch of people came on, but I didn't see it. I think I saw Bhavatarani Mataji and Hari Prabhu and maybe Gargraj. I don't know. If I missed you, please let me know. Because see, whenever I restart the page, I lose all the comments. Okay. Anyways, Dandavat Pranams, Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji. Okay. So, where was I? Okay, so understanding Krishna's plan, Uddhava, the unalloyed devotee and dearest friend of Krishna, was overwhelmed with separation and anxiety. Uddhava approached Krishna with folded hands, pleading to take him along to his spiritual abode. During his manifest pastimes on the earth, Krishna had exchanges with several of his devotees at Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, Indraprastha, Hastinapur, Mithila, and so on. So he went to all these places, but one place he didn't go was Badarikashram, where the great sages Nar Narayan resided. With his departure due now, Krishna wanted Uddhava to go and enlighten the sages at Badarik Ashram on his behalf. Krishna considered Uddhava as good as his own self, and thus imparted confidential teachings called the Uddhava-gīta to him. This Uddhava-gīta forms the longest philosophical section of Srimad Bhagavatam. In it, Krishna spoke about bhakti, gyan, and vairagya to teach us through Uddhava. So these are the teachings we went through yesterday. Oh, and the power is back. So I'm going to switch over back to the Wi-Fi. I'm going to disappear for a second again because, yeah, 1 second. Okay, I am back on the Wi-Fi. Sorry about all this trouble, everybody. Okay. Uh, okay. So Uddhava-gīta, equal vision. Oh wait, let me just make sure that this is still connected. It is. Okay, good. Haribol Pradyumna Prabhu Mantaramurti Mataji. Okay, Uddhava-gīta. So first Krishna speaks about equal vision. Krishna spoke to Uddhav. Dear Uddhav, my mission here is complete. As I depart, you too should not remain here as the earth you too should not remain here, as the earth would be bereft of all piety in Kali Yuga with people addicted to sinful life. Give up all attachments. Fix your mind on me and see everything with an equal vision and a renounced spirit. Becoming one's own guru. Hearing about the renounced spirit suggested by Krishna, Uddhav asked, how can I cultivate such detached vision, since renunciation is difficult for ordinary people who are attached to sense enjoyment? Krishna answered, an intelligent person can analyze the worldly situation by perception, common sense, and logic to rise above sense enjoyment. By inculcating certain principles and avoiding certain activities, one can search out and ultimately attain me, the Supreme Lord. Therein lies the glory of human life. King Yadu had once seen a young Avadut Brahmin, Lord Dattatreya, who appeared learned, wandering about fearlessly. Yadu learnt that the Brahmin had taken shelter of 24 gurus, including the plants, animals, birds, insects, and nature, along with the moving story of the prostitute Pingala. Okay, so now we made it up to this section. So now we're going to hear about the 24 gurus. So let's go to Uddhava-gīta. Okay, so the Supreme Lord said, when the Avadut Brahman was thus respected by King Yadu and spoken to, when the Avadut Brahman was thus respected and spoken to in this way by the intelligent King Yadu, who is the benefactor of the Brahmanas, being pleased with the king's respectful attitude, he began to humbly reply. Sārārtha-darśinī, commentary by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. The Supreme Lord said, O most fortunate Uddhav, when the wise King Yadu pleased the Avadut by his service, he began to speak as follows. Shri Brahmana Uvacha Santi me Kuravo Rajan Bhavo Buddhyupashrita Yato Buddhim Upadaya Mukto Tamihatan Shrinu. The Avadut Brahman said, my dear king, I have received knowledge from the many spiritual masters who are present in this world. It is because of this that I am able to freely wander about in this world. Now, please hear as I describe these spiritual masters to you. Sārārtha-darśinī. O king, I have many spiritual masters who I chose with the help of my intelligence. Although I did not formally receive instructions from them, I have accumulated much knowledge by observing them with the help of my intelligence. In this way, I have become free from the miseries of material existence and am wandering about freely in this world. Now let me tell you the names of these spiritual masters. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya commentary by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. Those who are averse to Krishna and who are full of anarthas are always busy lording it over material objects. They spend their days accomplishing the three objectives of life: religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Their only aim is to enhance their duration of life, as well as their glories and beauty. Because Avadhut Mahashai did not display any such behavior, King Yadu asked him the reason for this wandering about in this way. In reply, the Avadhut said, "Rather than accepting these 24 entities that are observed within this visible world as a means of my enjoyment, I have accepted them as my instructing spiritual masters, giving up the conception of accepting something and rejecting something else. I do not live like an ordinary human being who is driven by mental speculation and thus bereft of the service of the spiritual master. I travel in this world under the shelter of my fixed intelligence. With a desire to surpass all anarthas and to always render loving service to the Supreme Lord, I have taken shelter of these 24 spiritual masters. Prithivi Vayurakasham Apognish-chandrama Ravi Kapoto Jaghara Sindhu Patango Madhukrid Gaja Madhuha Harino Mina Pingala Kuraror Bhaka Kumari Sharakrit Sarpa Urnanabhi Supe Shakrit Ete me Guravo Rajan Chaturvingshatirashrita Shiksha Vritti Bhireteshan Anvashiksham Ihatmanam. O King, I have taken shelter of the following 24 things as my spiritual masters: the earth, air, sky, water, fire, moon, sun, a pigeon, a python, the sea, a moth, a honeybee, an elephant, a honey thief, deer, fish, the prostitute Pingala, the Kurara bird, a child, a young girl, an arrow maker, a serpent, a spider, and a wasp. My dear King, by studying their activities, I have learned the science of the self. Sārārtha-darśinī. The earth, air, sky, water, fire, the moon, the sun, a pigeon, a python, the sea, a moth, a honeybee, an elephant, a hunter who steals honey, deer, fish, the prostitute named Pingala, a kurara bird, a child, a young girl, an arrow maker, a serpent, a spider, and a wasp. I have learned many things from the behavior of these 24 things. Yato yad anushikshami yatava nahushat maja tata purusha vyagra nibodha katayamite. Please listen, my dear son of Maharaj Yayati. My dear son of Maharaj Yayati, a tiger among men. As I tell you what I learned from each of these, listen as I tell you what I learned from each of these spiritual masters. Bhutarakramyamanopi dhiro daiva vashanugai tad vidvan nachalen margar anvashiksham kshiter vratam. A sober person, even when harassed by other living beings, should understand that his aggressors are acting helplessly under the control of providence. In this way, he should never be distracted from progress on his path. This principle of tolerance I have learned from the earth, which is always steady and tolerant, despite being repeatedly kicked by the living entities who dwell on her. So learn tolerance from the earth. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Avadhut had learned the quality of tolerance from the earth. This is being described in this verse. Even though living entities continuously walk over the surface of the earth always remains steady and fixed. The Avadhut learned this quality from the earth. In the same way, an intelligent person should never give up following his prescribed path, whether he meets with happiness or distress brought about by the arrangement of providence. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. People consider the earth to be an object of their enjoyment rather than an instructing spiritual master. Every person tries to distract others from the path of eternal religion by causing various disturbances. Because of accepting the subordination of the demigods, who fulfill our material desires, the living entities become envious of each other. When living entities are overwhelmed with miseries caused by other living entities, there is very little chance for them to exhibit tolerance. Intolerant people invariably exhibit a great propensity toward material enjoyment in this world due to lack of proper training. Nevertheless, the nature of the earth is tolerance. One can be tolerant if he considers the earth as a spiritual master and takes this lesson from her. Shashvat parartha sarveha pararthaikanta sambhava sadhu shiksheta bhubhrito nagashishya paratmatam. An intelligent person should learn from the mountain how to devote himself to the service of others, making their welfare the sole purpose for his existence. This is also the lesson to be learned as a disciple of the tree. What was that? He should learn from a mountain how to devote himself to the service of others. Sārārtha-darśinī. Two features of the earth are mentioned here, the mountains and the trees. What does one learn from the mountain? The mountain sustains the earth, produces streams that supply water, and produces various jewels. All these are meant for others' benefit. In the same way, all activities of a saintly person should be performed with the aim of benefiting others. This should be the nature of the devotees. Similarly, if someone uproots a tree and plants it somewhere else, the tree accepts it without any protest. One learns to do good to others from the tree. Therefore, a yogi should become like a tree. These are the teachings one should learn from the mountain and the tree. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The mountain is made of stone, but clay is not so hard. That is why the hard mountain can sustain the soft soil, but soft soil cannot sustain the burden of the mountain. The earth has two kinds of ingredients, the hard mountain and the soft clay. Everyone should learn how to perform welfare activities for others from the mountain. The principal characteristic of a saintly person is that he always desires supreme benefit for others. Otherwise, selfish interest captures the living entities and induces them to become envious of others. The lesson to be learned from the tree, which grows on the earth, is to tolerate disturbances caused by others. The non-devotee materialistic enjoyer considers all items of this world to be objects of his enjoyment. But a devotee considers all items as his spiritual masters and learns from them different things. This is the nature of a devotee. Worship of Lord Hari is possible only if one becomes as tolerant as a tree and as immovable and steady as a mountain. Otherwise, an intolerant person can never engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. That is why Sri Gaurasundar has instructed everyone to be as tolerant as a tree in order to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. Pranavrittaiva santushyen munir naivendriya priyai jnanam yatha nanashyeta navakiryeta vangmana. That's so strange. How come there's only 4 people watching? There was so many more before. I wonder if my connection's bad. Anyhow. As the life air moves within the body without expecting any support from the sense objects, a learned sage should take satisfaction in the simple maintenance of his existence, should not seek satisfaction through gratifying the material senses. In other words, one should take care of his material body in a way that his cultivation of spiritual knowledge will not be disturbed, and his speech and mind are not distracted from his spiritual discipline. So this time we're learning through the prana, right? The life air that moves in the body. Let's read the Sārārtha-darśinī commentary. Air is of two types: the life air that moves within the body, and the air of the external world, or wind. What we have to learn from the life air is being described here, from the prana. The life air performs its duty and is simply satisfied with food and other bare necessities of life. As the senses enjoy various sense objects, such as form, taste, and so on, the life air does not. Similarly, thoughtful sages should remain satisfied even with just food and water, like the life air. One should eat only as much as is required to keep the body and soul together, so that the life air will not be disturbed. If one does not eat, his mind will not remain active, and as a result, his knowledge will be destroyed. Therefore, one should maintain his life properly so that his speech and mind are not disturbed. Moreover, by eating abominable, dry, and unclean foods, one's mind and words become disturbed. Also, by eating palatable and rich foods, one becomes lazy, has an increase in the urge for sex, and becomes agitated in his speech and mind. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. It is not the duty of thoughtful men to give up their tolerance and become restless in this rarely attained human form of life. By manipulating the senses under the influence of one's mental propensity, one becomes attracted to imperfect, temporary material objects. When one thus engages in material activities that are apparently pleasing to his senses, then the path of his material enjoyment becomes clearly laid out. As soon as one forgets the Supreme Lord, one desires to lord it over this material world, which was created by Maya. As a result, his speech and mind become disturbed. Thus he becomes situated in the darkness of ignorance and considers such ignorance or partial knowledge to be the attainment of full knowledge. This is how he falls down from the understanding of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, by adopting the path of liberation and rejecting the path of sense gratification, there is no possibility of the speech and mind becoming covered by mixed knowledge or ignorance. In addition, disturbance of the body and intelligence under the influence of pseudo-renunciation does not help in diminishing the propensity for material enjoyment. Therefore, it is necessary to follow the path of proper renunciation and engage in the service of the Lord, which is the ultimate goal of life. Vishayeshva visham yogi nana dharmeshu sarvata guna dosha vyapetatma na vishajeta vayuvat. The self-realized soul, whose heart is free from thoughts of happiness and distress, should always remain unattached, like the wind, despite coming in contact with material objects which are full of material qualities. Sārārtha-darśinī. Now, what can be learned from the wind is being described. Even if one is exposed to sense gratification, one should not become attached to it. One should not place too much importance in insignificant, great, superior, or inferior material objects. As the wind cannot enter a closed room, and thus does not help in the act of burning there, the introspective sage should not be the cause of any material activity. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. As the unsteady, restless mind engages itself in enjoying form, taste, smell, sound, and touch, it nourishes various material conceptions of life. That is why subjects of thought, such as finding faults and attributing good qualities, display their mastery over the mind. As the wind blowing from various directions may create disturbances, the restless mind searching for varieties of material enjoyment destroys a conditioned soul's attempt for self-control. It is therefore essential for a devotee to serve Lord Hari by means of ekayan, with the support of fixed intelligence. Okay. I'm just wondering, what was ekayan? God? Does that mean one pointed focus? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Partive Vishvihadeheshu Pravishtastar Gunashraya Gunar Nayujate Yogi Gandharvayur Ivatmadrik. Just as the wind, although carrying varieties of aromas, does not mix with them, the self-realized soul, although living in a material body and apparently acting like an ordinary man, is never entangled. Sārārtha-darśinī. One should remain unattached to bodily activities. This is a lesson one should learn from the wind. Although the winds may carry good or bad aromas, it is not affected by them, or does not mix with them. Similarly, even though a self-realized soul may live in a material body and act according to his acquired nature, he does not become entangled. By learning from the wind, a yogi should not become attached to his body or bodily activities. He should always know that the spirit soul is different from the material body. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Those who are able to understand the temporary nature of the material body and mind, as well as the faults of the conditioned soul's aversion to the Supreme Lord, are fit to be called self-realized yogis. Such yogis do not act due to being driven by the three modes of material nature, nor do they become entangled in activities that are pleasing to the body and mind. As the wind carries aromas but is not affected by any particular aroma, giving up his own nature, similarly, the self-realized soul engages in the service of the Lord while accepting the necessities of the body without attachment. In this way, he remains free from the results of activities performed by his gross and subtle bodies. Antarhitaschastira jangameshu pramatma bhavena samanvayena vyachedam asangamatmano munyirna bhastvam vitatasya bhavayet. An introspective person, even while living in the material body, should consider himself to be an eternal spirit soul. He should see how eternal souls have entered all varieties of life forms, both moving and non-moving. And he should see that they are spread all over the universe. One should also understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his all-pervading feature as the Paramatma is present along with the eternal souls within all bodies. Both the individual soul and the Supreme Soul can be realized by contemplating the sky. Although the sky extends without limit and everything rests within the sky, it does not mix with anything, nor is it divided. Commentary, Sārārtha-darśinī. Although the Supersoul is situated both inside and outside all objects, he remains unattached, just like the sky. This is a lesson to be learned from the sky. In spite of remaining within the body, the Supersoul is all-pervading. By means of his transcendental realization, a yogi should think of the Supersoul as all-pervading, like the sky. Although present within all moving and non-moving living entities, he remains situated in a supreme position. Just as the all-pervading sky is present within a pot and is also outside the pot, the Supersoul, although present within the material bodies of all living entities, is all-pervading. Purport. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya, I mean. There is always difference between the constitutional characteristics of an object and its unconstitutional characteristics. Persons who are acquainted with the science of the self never support the argument that the material body is the self. A self-realized soul never engages in accepting or rejecting material objects. He has no intention of either expanding his material enjoyment or minimizing it. Because the living entities are simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, they also possess the quality of all-pervasiveness. Similarly, if the concept of Achinta Bheda Bhed is accepted, it can be understood that the living entities simultaneously possess both the possibility for aversion to the Supreme Lord and eternal service to the Supreme Lord. By directly or indirectly attaining knowledge of the self, one also realizes his self to be separate from the material objects he sees, just like the sky, which is present both inside and outside a pot. The natural characteristics of an object are realized by observing its interaction with other objects, both directly and indirectly. Tejo banamayar bhavar meghadyar vayuneritai nasprishyate navastarvat kalashrishtar kunai puman. Although powerful winds blow clouds across the sky itself is never disturbed. In the same way, the spirit soul is not transformed by contact with material nature. Although the spirit soul is awarded a body made of earth, water, and fire, and although his actions are dictated by the three modes of material nature, which are products of eternal time, his eternal nature is never affected. Sārārtha-darśinī. Just as the sky remains aloof despite the presence of clouds being driven by the mighty wind, the spirit soul is always aloof from the material body made of fire, water, earth, and so on, which was created by material time. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. As clouds hover throughout the sky, being driven by the wind, the sky does not mix with the clouds, even though they appear so. Similarly, although the gross and subtle bodies seem merged with the spirit soul is always distinct from them. When the spirit soul comes in contact with material nature, he is awarded a body made of the 5 gross elements. When the spirit soul is liberated from the bondage of the 3 modes of material nature, he has no more connection with the gross and subtle bodies. The eternal time factor is the original cause of the 3 modes of material nature. A differentiation in the three material qualities is made possible when the time factor becomes divided into past, present, and future. The conditional state produced by the material modes of nature, which are born of the divided time factor, is always distinct from the eternal spirit soul. Although clouds may appear to be part of the sky is distinct from the clouds, always maintaining its separate identity. Similarly, even though the spirit soul appears to be temporarily confined within the gross and subtle bodies, it is unaffected by them, just like the sky. Svacha prakritita snigdo madhuryastirta bhur nirnam muni punatyapam mitram ikshopasparsha kirtanai. O King, a saintly person is naturally pure, free from all contaminations, well-behaved, and a benefactor of all human beings. Just by seeing, touching, or hearing such an exalted soul, one is purified, just as one is cleansed by bathing with pure water. A saintly person, like a holy place of pilgrimage, purifies all those who meet him, because he is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Lord. Sārārtha-darśinī. Now the lesson to be learned from the water is being described. Water is by nature pure and cooling. It is considered to be affectionate toward everyone. Water is sweet. Saintly persons are also sweet by nature, and they purify all living entities by instructing them about devotional service. Saintly persons should behave as the well-wishing friend of everyone, just like water. Devotees purify everyone, just as water purifies everything by its contact. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The people of this material world, who always desire happiness and yet simply suffer from distress, are very restless, and so they cannot be thoughtful. They are incessantly driven by their material conceptions of life and are firmly situated in the principle that material enjoyment is everything. Because they are exceedingly attached to material enjoyment, when their desires are not satisfied, they become angry. When they are in anxiety due to a lack of material enjoyment, they become afflicted with fear. However, the sages who are inclined to the Lord's service are not like this. They are as sanctified as water. They are naturally affectionate to everyone, and they are compassionate to all living entities. They are true friends of all living entities. They always speak very sweetly, and they are never interested in dry arguments. They are themselves places of pilgrimage because they are fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord, and thus they possess the 26 transcendental qualities. Such great souls are in direct contact with the Lord, and thus are never bereft of his association. Such saintly souls purify the entire world by their constant glorification of the Lord. Simply by their association, their faithful followers become liberated from their condition of material absorption. By the phrase apam mitram, the thoughtful sages have been compared with water. Within the water of the thoughtful sages, the three Purusha incarnations, Karananar, I always have a hard time saying it when it's written like this, Karanarnavashai Vishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Kshiradakshai Vishnu, are manifest. Okay. There is no question of contamination in transparent water. There's no question of contamination in transparent water. By constant hearing and glorification of the Supreme Lord, liberated sages remain freed from material conceptions and thus become qualified to touch the Supreme Lord. Their association is the cause of the conditioned soul's liberation from the restlessness of the mind and the resultant conditional life. Tejasvi tapasadipto durdharsho darabhajana sarvabhakshopi yuktatma nadate malamagnivat. Saintly persons have become powerful by the execution of austerities. They do not endeavor to enjoy anything material of this world, and they accept food offered to them by destiny. If by chance they eat some contaminated food, they are not affected, just like fire, which burns up all contaminated substances that are offered to it. Sārārtha-darśinī. The lesson to be learned from fire is herein being described. The next 3 verses are also concerning fire. Fire is very powerful, and no one has the ability to counteract it. Fire digests the food that enters the stomach. Those who are fire like yogis should not accumulate eatables for the future, but should be satisfied with what is easily available. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The lessons to be learned from fire are being described in this verse and the following 3 verses. In this verse, it is said that when fire burns everything, it remains unaffected. Fire doesn't become contaminated, rather, it purifies everything. Similarly, saintly persons, even though given the opportunity to enjoy material objects, do not do so, but instead remain unattached. They are always transcendently situated, and so they do not take pleasure in temporary material objects. This is a characteristic of self-realized souls. Such persons do not accumulate things unnecessarily. They accept things only to the extent as is necessary for their maintenance, and that also without attachment. Saintly persons are always free from the contamination of sinful activities, and thus they are the true moralists. They are not attracted to anything of this visible world, being driven by insatiable greed to attain spiritual perfection. Because they're so greedy to attain spiritual perfection, they are not attracted to anything of this visible world. These are the qualities to be learned from fire. Let me just check the comments. Haribol, Dandavat Pranams Ganga Mataji. Kvachit chana kvachit spashta upasya shreya ichatam bhunkte sarvatra datrinam dahan prag uttara shubham. A pure devotee, just like fire, is sometimes not visible and at other times he is seen. For the benefit of the conditioned souls who are desperately searching for happiness, a pure devotee may act as a spiritual master, and thus, like fire, burn his disciples' sinful reactions to ashes by mercifully accepting their service. Sārārtha-darśinī. Devotees do not like to disclose their own glories, so they are like fire covered by ashes. Sometimes, in order to teach people, devotees reveal their glories just like a blazing fire. Sometimes they act as a spiritual master for the benefit of ordinary people. As fire accepts gifts such as ghee offered by worshippers, devotees accept the glorification offered by their worshippers. In this way, they burn to ashes, just like fire. In this way, they burn to ashes, just like fire, the most coveted objects possessed by materially absorbed worshippers, without exhibiting the slightest desire to enjoy them. Swamayaya shrishtamidam sarasa lakshanam vibhu pravishta iyate tat tat swarupognir ivaidhasi. The all-pervading Supersoul, having entered the bodies of the different species of life, which are created by his own energy, appears to have assumed such identities, just as fire appears to be manifest differently in pieces of wood of different sizes and shapes. Sārārtha-darśinī. As fire is present within wood and manifests when there is friction, the Supreme Lord is present everywhere within this world, and he reveals himself when one cultivates devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Just as fire is present within the wood and generally manifests when there is friction, similarly, the object of worship remains with the worshipper. The object of worship remains with the worshipper as he displays various worldly forms. Because the living entities are by nature subordinates to the Supreme Lord, their perfection is attained when they attain complete shelter of the object of their worship. Because the conditioned souls in this material world accept service from others rather than rendering service to their worshipable Lord, they forget their constitutional position as eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. Although the conditioned souls who are averse to the Lord's service are situated within the temporary nature created by the Supreme Director, which causes their constitutional position to be covered by and their service to the Lord forgotten, they remain fully spiritual. Let me reread that. Although the conditioned souls who are averse to the Lord's service are situated within temporary nature created by the Supreme Director, which causes their constitutional position to be covered and their service to the Lord to be forgotten, they remain fully spiritual. Okay, I got it. Okay, we're reading 2 more verses and then we're ending for today. Visargadya shmashananta bhavadehasya natmana kalanam iva chandrasya kalina vyaktavartmana. The stages of one's bodily condition, beginning with birth and ending with death, have no effect upon the eternal soul, just like our vision of the waxing and waning of the moon does not affect the moon itself. Such changes occur due to the imperceptible movements of time. Commentary. Birth and death, as well as the other transformations, are meant only for the material body and not the spirit soul, just as the apparent waxing and waning of the moon does not affect the moon itself. Such changes are enforced by the imperceptible movements of time. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Okay, Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The wheel of time is unseen. and the present conditional states, the living entities cannot understand what undivided or eternal time is. It is the time factor that causes the waxing and waning of the moon. From this example, it is understood that the pure spirit soul neither increases nor decreases. Rather, it is the material body which is obtained from the temporary material nature that develops and then dwindles. Under the influence of time, the material body is born, remains for some time, and then dies. As the waxing and waning of the moon is an effect of reflecting the rays of the sun, so all living entities are manifested in various species by the will of the Supreme Lord. Kalena hyogravegena bhutanam prabhavapyayo nityavapi nadrishyete atmanogner yatarchisham. The flames of a fire appear and disappear at every moment, but this is not noticed by the casual observer. Similarly, the waves of time flow without stop, like the currents of a mighty river, and they imperceptibly cause the birth and death of the countless bodies of the living entities. And yet, the soul, who is thus forced to change his position again and again, cannot perceive how time is working. Sārārtha-darśinī. Just like the logic of Singha Avalokana, this verse is teaching us the lesson to be learned from fire. As sparks continuously appear from a blazing fire and then disappear, the material bodies of the spirit souls are constantly appearing and disappearing. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The birth and death of the living entities is caused by powerful time. As fire sometimes appears blazing and sometimes appears meek, the apparent conditions of the material body vary, but the spirit soul is unaffected. Oh, we still have some more time. I'm going to continue, or should we just stop here? I think I'm gonna, okay, I'll stop here. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. All right. I'd like to make a chart for this. 24 Gurus, 11th Canto chart. I wonder if anybody's done that before. 11th Canto chart. Or maybe. Anyways. Anyhow, okay. I will look this up and see if we can get an easy summary of this, just like a chart or something. All right. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju Ki Jai, Nityalla Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shila Gurudev Ki Jai, Nityalla Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Nityalla Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupāda Ki Jai, Nityalla Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishmar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatarashata Shishmar Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda ki jai. Nityal Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Śrīla Gaurkishoras Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Ṭhākura ki jai. Nityal Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Nu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Patadash Raghunath Shar Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Ṭhākura ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kuni Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Thakur Sārārtha-darśinī ki jai. Śrīla Prabhupāda Gauḍīya Bhāṣya ki jai. Shri Uddhava-gīta ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keshavaśya Kṛṣṇa Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Pancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandava pranams everybody. Actually, what I think might be kind of fun to do. Have you ever seen Anki cards? I'll show you Anki cards. This is a really cool thing. It's a scientific thing called spaced repetition. And so like these are my Anki cards. So for Sanskrit grammar, these are my Anki cards that are due. So I click on this, study now, then, okay, special use of the instrumental with saha. Okay, so yeah, you'd say, Guru Devena Saha. You add Ena. Right? Is that the answer? Let's see. Let's show the answer. Yes. Aharena Saha. Kakena Saha. Okay, so is that difficult, good, or easy? If it's easy, then they'll give this to me after 16 days. If it's good, they'll give it to me after 10 days. If this is difficult, they'll give it to me after 4 days. And in that way, there's big spaces in between having to come back to this. And it's done in a mathematical way so that you will have it in your mind. You'll get to the point where you have it in your mind forever. And it doesn't take any time to do. So it might be fun for me to make all these 24 gurus into cards so that we can, yeah, I might do that. And then Anki is free also. So anyways, if I get around to it, I will do that. I'll make all the 24 gurus into cards, and so then we can have it in our memory of what the speciality of each of these 24 gurus are. All right, see you all tomorrow. Jai Shri Radhe. Oh wait, and tomorrow is a big day. Tomorrow is Shri Ram Navami, and it is also the appearance day of Shri Srimad Bhakti Vallabha Tirtha Goswami Maharaj. So, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow yet, but I will definitely go live tomorrow at the normal time, 7:30, but maybe I'll do extra reading, because there's, a lot to read today. All right. Hari Bol, everybody. See you all tomorrow for Ram Navami. Hare Krishna.